Over its 2,000-year history, the City of London has come close to annihilation many times, from invading Viking hordes to great fires. But no closer was it to annihilation than during the months of September 1940 and May 1941 during the Blitz. The Luftwaffe, frustrated that they couldn't knock Britain out of the war, turned their attention away from the RAF to the British people, to their morale, unleashing hell on the city.
In a matter of minutes, more than 1,500 different sections of the city burst into roaring flames. Flames that swiftly merged into the greatest fire in recorded history.
To dig deep into this history and try and understand what it was like to live under the relentless bombardment, I've put together a Blitz pack full of archival material, documents, maps and photos that help us retrace the steps of the bombardment across London, looking at some of the most heavily affected sites. And along the way, we can find some of the scars of war that remain to this day. As part of my kit, I've got the County Council's bomb damage map. Now, this is the most detailed map that we have of the individual bombs dropped on London, and it's colour-coded. So you've got the orange and red areas, which show lighter damage, all the way through to the purples and the blacks, with the black meaning total destruction. Each of these would have been coloured with crayon and different dyes. And so if we want to find the scars of war across London, then we need to head to the area with the most black damage. And this here is Holborn, the first stop on our journey. This is it. This is High Holborn, the place on the map that was covered with black marks due to just how heavily it was bombed. To put it into a little bit of context, you would have had around 600 buildings destroyed here. That's 1 in every 7 building that was in this region. And to show just the human impact of that, you had around 1,000 casualties, dead and injured. That would have been people who had to live under high explosives, incendiaries, V2 rockets falling right on this area. You can imagine it as the air raid sirens are blasting into the street, people running for cover as the hail of steel and iron fell to the ground.
Moving further down High Holborn, you'll notice new buildings sandwiched between old ones, indicating just which structures had survived and which were destroyed. One such building caught in the crossfire was the iconic Holborn Empire.
There weren't many things to keep the nation's morale high during the dark days of the Blitz, but one thing that lifted spirits was the voice of Vera Lynn. In fact, she was due to play right here at the Holborn Empire on the 15th of October 1940. But just one day before, a delay fuse bomb fell by the stage door and she moved to the Palladium up the road. That was a bit of luck, because that very night on the 15th of October, the Holborn Empire was obliterated. A near miss for the nation's songbird.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
We often think the Luftwaffe picked out key targets, but the truth is they didn't have the technology to bomb with pinpoint precision. Instead, they shared an old adage with the British. In order to destroy something, you've got to destroy everything. So their tactic was to carpet bomb, area bomb the whole city. Everything from homes to monuments, even churches and hospitals were caught in the crossfire, leaving whole regions completely flattened as a result.
So we've just come off High Holborn there, and we're looking for Warwick Court. And the reason why we're looking for that is because this circle denotes that a V2 fell here. And the black colour means that there was total destruction. So this is Warwick Court here, and you can see the old buildings along the street. But Because of this designation, it means that there should be a new building scarring the London skyline and this giant void in the middle, because it was here, exactly on this spot, that you would have had a V2 rocket fall on London.
In 1944, as Germany's power was waning, a last-ditch vengeful effort was made to bend the will of the British people. It was here that Adolf Hitler unleashed a new weapon on London, the V2 rocket. I wanted to see one of these vengeance weapons for myself, so next on our journey we head further west to the Science Museum in South Kensington.
And here it is, the V2 rocket, Hitler's vengeance weapon, the final attempt by Hitler to push Britain back on its heels towards the end of the war. It's hard not to be impressed by the sheer scale of this rocket. It's 14 meters tall, and once it was launched from Holland and crossed the Channel, it would hit speeds of up to 3 times the speed of sound. It would touch the very edge of space and then hurtle down to Earth. The last that anyone would hear of it would be the sonic boom that erupted as it hit the ground. It was invented by a Nazi scientist called Wernher von Braun. Now, he was such a genius that he was recruited by the Americans during the Cold War to help beat the Soviets in the space race. What he created was pretty impressive as an offensive weapon. It couldn't be countered. The only way you could stop this was by bombing the sites it was launched from. But with all of this in mind, we can consider von Braun a genius. But we have to remember the fact that 10,000 Nazi prisoners of war were killed making these weapons.
For our next stop, we don't have to travel too far. While we may be further from the centre of London, the impact of war can still be found even here in South Kensington.
You might not think after 80 years there'd be many scars of the Second World War in London, but if you cross the road from the Science Museum and you come here to the V&A, you can see, well, they're pretty evident. During the Blitz, you had a high explosive bomb detonate here, and it would have sent shrapnel shooting through the air, a force so powerful that it would have made these massive holes in the limestone. We're talking 5, 6, 7 inches deep. And in fact, so powerful was the blast that it blew out the doors to the museum, shattered all of the windows, and it was only then, for the first time in the war, that the V&A closed. The blast that occurred here was so powerful that not only did it smash into the limestone, but it also went straight through the iron of these telephone boxes. Talk about a close call.
Returning to our bomb damage map, we've arrived at another bit of Second World War history still present on the streets of London, or rather beneath them. During both World Wars, many Londoners sought refuge in the tunnels of the London Underground, but even those hiding deep beneath the city weren't entirely safe. I've come to meet Transport for London archivist Tamara Thornhill to find out what happened here at Bank Underground Station on one unfortunate evening.
We saw a photo earlier of a cataclysmic explosion in the centre of Bank, right outside the Bank of England.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened there that day?
Basically a direct hit on the booking hall of Bank Tube Station, and then the blast permeated down the stairs and the escalators onto the platforms. Unfortunately, there were sort of 56 people killed, and then there were obviously more people killed on the surface, and more people died of their injuries afterwards. So the final tally is 111 people, and there is a plaque commemorating those people as well. We're really lucky in the archives collections. We have a whole host of first-hand accounts of incidents that took place during the Second World War, mainly written by our staff, because obviously our staff were heavily involved in all sorts of activities during the war, and particularly manning the stations. And what we actually have is we have an account from a detective inspector at Leicester Square Station. who was actually off duty. He was just coming off of duty that night. And he says that he received a message that was sent and sent him scurrying across London Bridge as the shell splinters flew over to Bank Station when it was hit, where he found the shelterers who had been blown clean off of the platform and against the tunnel wall. So the bomb had blown away the top station and burst in the escalator chambers, clearing the platforms. A train took 1,000 survivors to other stations.
Wow.
So, you know, unfortunately 111 killed, but over 1,000 people surviving. And of course, the reason that there were so many people down there is because they were sheltering down there.
Of course, you can just imagine the blast, right? So you've got it on the surface and then that shock wave that goes down the stairs and literally blows people to smithereens. Was this a common occurrence for those who sheltered down in the underground?
Fortunately not. There was a hit to sort of a water tower at Balham that flooded the station.
Right.
But they're the only kind of direct hits that tube stations took. Now that doesn't mean that they didn't get the light tremors and things like that, and obviously they would have heard everything that was going on upstairs as well. But really the underground was the safest place to be in many ways, and over the course of the Second World War there were over 63 million people sheltered on the tubes.
Wow.
So it was a huge sort of place of sanctuary, really.
So people in general were looked after down there. What was life like down there? We hear about the doom and gloom of the Blitz, and rightly so.
Yeah.
But was there a sense of community underground in London during this period?
Well, certainly from the accounts that we have in the archives collections, I'd say yes. Yes, there was. We've got some oral histories from children who sheltered on the tube stations. One individual, a little girl who sheltered at Tottenham Court Road, and her memories very much are about this sort of the entertainment side of things, and she actually believes that she was entertained by Lionel Blair, which is perfectly possible because
the famous dancer.
Yeah, the famous dancer, because there are accounts of him and his sister sort of doing little tours of the underground stations to entertain people.
So no one wanted to be down there, but there was just that little glimmer of hope and joy of being down, relatively safe, whilst hell was breaking loose above.
Absolutely. And it's quite interesting just how normalised it became as well. We spoke about the refreshments, and sort of one of the things that we have in our collections is a complaint from the shelterers. They're not complaining about conditions, they're not complaining about the noise or anything like that. They're complaining about the quality of the tea. They're complaining about the fact that the tea is discoloured.
Yep.
And the organisation actually took this on board and did some investigations into why this may be. And apparently it was a combination of the copper from the stills that were used and the conditions down there. The solution was to add a little touch of citric acid. But I just think it's fantastic that was sort of their biggest concern.
Hey, this is Britain. This is the Blitz.
Exactly. Where would we be without tea?
The London Underground serves as a lasting reminder of the Londoners' resilience and resourcefulness during the war. And of course, it wasn't the only thing to be repurposed during this time.
Unlike over at the V&A, where the scars of war have been preserved for posterity, over here in South London at Tabard Gardens, you have some of the remainders of war that have just been left, well, really, by accident. You've got these. Now, these are stretchers from the Second World War. They would have been used to take the dead and wounded out of the bombed out houses. How do we know they're stretchers? Well, they've got curves here. So the stretcher bearer would lay them down on the ground, they would place the person on top, and they would use these gaps to pick them up and carry them to safety. Why are they here? Well, during the war, the council took away a lot of the metal railings to use in the war effort. And then at the end of the war, where the gaps were, the council simply used these spare stretchers, no longer needed, to fill the gaps. They are little gems from the Second World War that you literally might never notice. And if you're lucky enough, they might even be outside your bedroom window.
Thanks for watching this video on the History Hit YouTube channel. You can subscribe right here to make sure you don't miss any of our great films that are coming out. Or if you are a true history fan, check out our special dedicated history channel, historyhit.tv. You're going to love it.